Hello, friends, and welcome to the Epic Human Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Blair, and thanks for listening today. Today's guest is Eric Anderson, a principal at Scale Venture Partners, a Bay Area venture firm that specializes in enterprise SaaS developer tools and infrastructure. Eric is a former product manager at both Google and Amazon, a former engineer with GE's rotational leadership program, and a lifelong entrepreneur. Eric founded DocPro, the Uber for office work, which he currently runs and can be found at docpro.app. He's also a dedicated family man as the father of 4 fantastic children. In this episode, Eric shares his unique experiences growing up as one of 6 siblings, discovering his passion for science and making things as a kid, facilitating union conflicts as a young engineer, breaking into the world of cloud computing with some of the largest tech titans of Silicon Valley, and eventually transitioning to a career in venture capital. Eric is my classmate from Harvard Business School, also known as HBS, and we've known each other for about 7 years. He has a powerful intellect, strong ethics, and a positive creative attitude. He's the type of person you want your kids to be around and emulate. I feel grateful to Eric, to call Eric a friend, and I feel even more grateful to him for joining me on the podcast. So without further delay, please give it up for an epic human, Eric Anderson. Okay, we are live with Eric Anderson, principal here at Scale Venture Partners. Is that right?
Yeah.
Scale Venture Partners. Thanks for having me over here in Foster City.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for coming.
So, Eric, so you and I met at HBS about 7 years ago. And I remember you fondly because I felt like we had a lot in common. I'm not sure if you felt this way.
Yeah.
But, we both... had come from big manufacturing companies and like rotational programs and whatnot.
That's right.
We were both married, right?
Yep.
And you of course had your son and we were pre-kids, but we were both married. So kind of like, not in the whole party universe of HBS. And I also felt like we were both like more of the down to earth people. There were a lot of mostly down to earth people at HBS, but I felt that way. And I also remember you gave me some of the best parenting advice that I've ever had. And you might recall this was like right at the end of our 2 years, and I came to you and basically saying, I need some parenting advice. I'm going to have a baby soon. And do you remember what you said?
I don't actually.
Okay.
I hope it was profound.
No, it was great. It was great because at the time I didn't appreciate it, but after I had kids, I really appreciated it. You basically said, you should go with your wife and go to a movie and maybe out to dinner.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to get to do that so often.
Yeah.
And at the time, I'm like, what kind of advice is this? And then now that I have kids, I'm like, oh yeah, I wish I'd done more of that.
And now with DoorDash and Netflix, like we pretend we don't even need that anymore.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah, so I miss the real movies and real dinner.
I know, as do I. Well, thanks for agreeing to be on the podcast. I'm excited to get into it with you today and talk about your role here at Scale and all about you. But first, as we do on the Epic Human Podcast, would like to just start with your origin story. And so we'd like to just start with, where did you grow up? Tell me about like your upbringing and your family.
Yeah, I grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah. I probably fit a lot of stereotypes for Salt Lake City. I came from Mormon heritage, pioneer, like European ancestry, crossed the plains from the eastern United States or by boat, and settled in what was then, Wild West territorial United States. Along the street, I came from a big family, so I was the third of 6 kids. Let's see.
Brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I was 3 boys, 3 girls.
Okay, and you were?
The third boy. So, girl, boy, me.
Okay.
And then boy, girl, girl.
Cool.
Yeah.
And what were you like as a kid?
What was I like? So I was probably nerdy. I was really into science. Like I had this everyone, I don't know if everyone had one, but I had like the crystal radio set I was super fond of.
Mm.
You could like make your own radio.
Oh,
Neat. Yeah, you like wrap wires around like a pipe, and I think it was underneath the sink in the bathroom, and you can like get radio frequencies.
Oh.
I had this thing called Capsella. There were other more popular sets like constructor sets or like Lego stuff, but I was into this thing called Capsella.
Capsella, that's a radio?
No, this is just like a normal like toy where you like make you can make like a car or a boat or a flashlight. You kind of like modular pieces. And this battery was one of them, a motor was one of them.
Cool.
I still have, actually, I think I have it in storage. Like I was like, this thing's like part of me now. Like Capsella was like my thing.
It's that important.
Yeah, it's that important. Some people have baseball cards. I have this set at home. So that maybe one more anecdote on that. My parents gave me, I don't know when this was, Hail Bop. Have you heard of this comet called Hail Bop?
Yeah.
So when we were kids, presumably, there was this comet came by Earth for the first time.
Right.
I was way into like I read all the newspaper about there was this guy named Hale and a guy named Bop, and they both discovered it independently. And I had pictures of Hale Bop on my walls. My parents got me a telescope, so I was really into astronomy for a bit. And anyway, so that's a little bit about.
And what were the values you grew up with? Like what did you get from your parents that you still kind of stay with you today?
Oh, it's interesting. My dad was a big reader, and he was a really good listener, and I basically just believed he knew everything, and so I'd go to him with like questions and ideas, and he would just hear me out, and he would always like kind of direct me to learn more, like how I could learn more ways. And so I think I was instilled with this like desire to learn, this like kind of confidence that I could learn, and a great sounding board to like for things. That was a fairly powerful kind of memory of my parents.
And what's it like being a kid in a family with 6 kids? You know, I mean, I know it's probably hard to contrast because you don't have the other side.
Right, it's
but
very normal. It's I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Like, was it hard to find your identity? Is it, I don't know.
Yeah, there probably is. Certainly your siblings play a role. Like, it's not just like what your parents taught you. It's in part what your siblings teach you.
Right.
I mean, they're as influential as anything. I can imagine it's hard for some to find identity. I think maybe going back to the telescope thing.
Yeah.
There were I had this like fairly vivid memory of being out there on my own on the back porch, looking at. This was a very rudimentary telescope. Like it did, all you could see was Jupiter and Saturn. You could see Mars and Venus, but they don't look like anything. They're just like white circles, very small. But you could see Jupiter's moons. You could see Saturn's rings. That was it.
All right.
And I remember it was really difficult to get them in the viewfinder, and when I would find them, I'd be so excited, elated.
Yeah.
And I look around and realize I'm all by myself, and there's kind of no one to like share this with, and there's like a tinge of maybe loneliness in that memory, but a whole lot of like, I was like, you know what, I could hear my siblings inside, and I think I realized like they're not really into this. Like I could go pull them out. I probably did show them. And they're like, oh, that's cool, and they go back in.
Right.
I think in moments like that, I was like, okay, I'm my own person. Like,
this is my thing.
This is cool.
Right.
I like this.
Right.
And no one really gets it, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So maybe it helps you kind of forge an identity in that, like, you're surrounded by these seemingly identical peers, and rather than in that process, you kind of sift out who you are. I don't know.
Sure. I'm always curious about like sibling dynamics because you always wonder, like, the younger ones, as they look at what the older ones are doing. Sometimes they're attracted to what the older ones are doing. Sometimes they're they might be interested, but they're like, no, I want to try my own thing.
Yeah.
So it's just a topic I find interesting. I mean, we both have kids now, so I'm starting to see that play out, and it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, on that, I think there was enough distance between me and my older brother where I felt I like emulated him, like he was kind of
right.
bigger, cooler. Everyone knew about him, and so I went to high school and I just played all the same sports he did.
Right.
And I didn't have a problem with that. I thought it was kind of aspired, and I think there were others in my family that were closer in age, and I think there was a little more, maybe not competition is not the right word, but seeking to kind of differentiate yourself because they were maybe similar in age.
Right. So tell us more about high school. So you're into sports. What sports? What subjects interested you?
So sports. I played football, and then I wrestled in the winter. No one really does that anymore, I understand, but I loved it. And then I played rugby in the spring, which is kind of unique to my high school. I don't think rugby's all that common.
Yeah.
But they kind of reinforced. There was a lot of head bashing. Kind of reinforced each other. Academically, I was a good enough student. I'm kind of like driven by shiny objects. I get excited about things, and I'm really motivated to do them. And so, for some of my classes, I would get into them. But if I wasn't into things, it was hard for me to. I was always wanting, like, oh, that seems like busy work. I'll just. So I was never great about homework, but there was enough kind of general interest in learning that I was able to get by on tests and such. But yeah, it's more of the same, math and science. Mm-hmm. Enough math to do the science. Math was never all that intrinsically interesting.
Cool.
Yeah.
And how did that inform your interest in college and where'd you go to college and all that?
It's funny, during my senior year, one of my best friends, when we were graduating, we were talking about what we would do in college, and he was like, I think I want to become an electrical engineer, and I'm going to research like, what was it? It was, he had like a specific topic he wanted, and I was just blown away.
Wow.
Analog to digital conversion. Like he wanted to make that more efficient.
Wow.
I was like, so no, I think I was like, engineering was like a new idea still to me, and I was like, maybe I'll study engineering, and I wasn't even sure that there were different kinds, what kinds.
Yeah.
That all kind of played out in college. Yeah.
That's funny. I had a very similar experience.
Yeah.
I actually signed up for math because I was like, I guess I like math. I'm going to sign up for a math major.
Right.
And then the summer before I started my freshman year, I met this guy who was an engineer, and he's like, oh, you should try engineering. It's like math but more fun, and you get to build stuff. And I was like, oh, maybe I will try that. So I just called the school. I said, I'd like to switch to an engineering major. They were like, click, 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 done. Okay, see you in September.
Similarly, I met a mechanical engineer who I grew close with. He hired me to do some work. I liked him and thought he was interesting, and so I declared mechanical engineering.
Yeah.
It's funny how maybe ill-informed we are
Totally.
in these fairly significant pursuits.
Totally. And so then just tell us more about college, kind of like how did that go? Tell us about mechanical engineering.
Yeah, so it actually, I got so growing up in a family, I paid my own way through college, so I had to do summer work.
Wow.
And I basically showed up without any money. So I had a scholarship to the metallurgical engineering department. I was like material science for metals. There was like 6 people studying this, and so I took it, and I was basically doing generals, and then quickly I was like, I should do something that's a little more broad, and went into mechanical, which seemed broad, and people I knew who were interesting had done it. And
how did you end up with that scholarship, and did you lose the scholarship because you did this?
Yeah, so I could keep the scholarship as long as I was on track towards metallurgy, and in the first year or two, I think I did maybe a year and a half or 2 years, was kind of more or less the same. Mm-hmm. And then I could see in year, the like 4th semester, that I was like, I have to take. I mean, I did take like a whole course on aluminum alloys, or I think it was aluminum alloys. And I quickly was like, I think this is too too narrow too quick. Like I'm not sure what I want to be when I grow up.
Yeah.
And it may not have to do with aluminum alloys.
Yeah.
And so I ditched the scholarship at that point. I had some other, I had like a bit of general scholarship money.
Yeah. But how'd you get started in the metallurgy?
Oh
thing?
no, they sent me. It was kind of like recruiting. Like they were looking. I'm trying to think how.
They're like, we got to fulfill
express
this.
some interest. Yeah, they had some money to spend on people.
Right.
So
they had some metallurgy scholarship money burning a hole in their pocket.
Yeah. So they were kind of like recruiting people to apply, and I applied, and I think as long as you like had some fairly good math science grades, warm body,
cool,
you could get scholarship.
Very cool. Wow, you paid your own way. That is rare, and it's probably becoming more rare.
Yeah, that's not possible. Not possible anymore.
Nice. Okay, so you graduated, and you're like, okay, what do I do with my career? Like, what do I want to do for my first job? And how did that unfold?
Yeah. So after declaring mechanical, I think in my junior year, I'd done some internships, and some of the engineering jobs looked like a pretty aspects of them were kind of boring. Like they seemed like you were kind of an expert on a certain widget. I interned in a place where I was just in a cube kind of designing things, and it didn't seem to have the kind of creative energy, new ideas thing I was looking for. A friend of mine told me, he's like, you should just like, he's like, a lot of engineers go into like, I don't know who, business consulting, he was telling me I should look at. I had no idea what this was, like management consulting, but it's like a smart thing, a thing that smart people do apparently at school. And conversation around that led me to learn that there was this way to apply to Harvard early. So I did the 2+2 application.
Oh, you did that. Okay.
And I was admitted as a junior.
Okay.
And I think that kind of like helped me feel like I could kind of veer out of maybe traditional engineering jobs out of school.
And maybe explain 2+2, because I know what it is, but
yeah. Well, there's more of this now, but you can apply to graduate school before you leave undergrad,
right?
And with the intent to work. So 2 years of working and then 2 years of school was kind of the idea.
Gotcha.
So so I was admitted kind of before graduating.
Wow.
3 years in advance, and then I had to go find a job for 2 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And my understanding is sometimes it's easy to get a job, but sometimes there's kind of a harder part of it because your employer knows you're going to be leaving in 2 years. Did you have any trouble with that, or did you have to deal with that in any way?
The 2+2 did not help me get a job. I mean, 2009 also didn't help me get a job, right? So it was not a great market. And then I told a few employers, and they were kind of confused by it.
Right.
I think particularly for the job, like engineering jobs. I think if you went and told a consulting firm you were leaving, they'd be fine.
Yeah.
But,
right.
So I got a job at GE. A friend referred me. It was a super exciting program, but they didn't know anything about my plans for business school, which I felt okay with because it wasn't even clear that it was still kind of maybe I wouldn't go kind of thing.
Sure. Right. Good option though.
Yeah.
And so this was a rotational program?
Yeah, it was called OMLP, Operations Management Leadership Program.
Mm-hmm.
Supply chain, and fairly like I wore steel toes, safety glasses, factory, real work. Yeah.
And where were you living, and kind of what were you? Was it like multiple rotations, moving different places, or was it you stay in the same place and do different things?
Yeah, so it's 6 months, an assignment. Assignments typically required you to move. So I was in Cincinnati, then Boston, Research Triangle, North Carolina, and then Connecticut. One of maybe the most interesting one, Boston, I was a union supervisor. So I wasn't in the union, notably.
Right.
But the union workers had to check in with me at shift, receive assignments, and I kind of represented the GE to them.
The man.
Right, the man. I was the man. Anyway.
Yeah, what was that like?
Well, at first it scared me to death. I had never worked with angry old people and people, East Coast people, let alone like, but
East Coast people are generally angry.
Yeah, maybe
more so than West, maybe.
But I think I quickly realized, maybe not quickly, but eventually I realized what was going on. So there was this union steward, and he would just yell at me all the time, seemingly for like strange things. And eventually I wised up to the fact that his job is to like give me a hard time.
Okay.
Like if the man isn't being given a hard time, why do we need a steward?
Yeah.
You know?
Okay.
Yeah. Or the union. Really.
Yeah. Right.
Like the union has to continue to put, and as soon as I kind of like realized some of these kind of dynamics, I was like, all right, I should just basically take his lickings, you know, and then there was opportunity, as long as I played that role, to then that they would give and I would give, kind of thing. There was a compromise.
Okay.
So if I needed to get work done, I could go to the steward and be like, look, like these parts aren't moving fast enough, which is fine, I suppose. Whatever, everyone's working as hard as they can, but these ones are more important. So like, can we like shuffle the deck and put these in front? And you know, he'd gruff and grumble, but I think he understood. Also, I imagine there was kind of this acknowledgement, it seemed, where, you know, if he does my favors, then I can take his kind of verbal public beratement, and we all move on. Everybody wins.
You guys found like an equilibrium point.
Yeah,
nice push and pull.
I found peace with the union.
That's cool. I had a similar experience in North Dakota.
Okay.
When I was working at Bobcat, I was working on the manufacturing line, and my project was to bring a union build, like a union assembly line, to a non-union plant.
Oh yeah, okay.
So I was pretty popular.
Yeah, exactly.
And I remember and this is my first job out of school, right? And so I don't know, 23 or 22, whatever I was. And I'm talking to like the foreman, and I'm like, okay, we just got to like pack up all this stuff. and this guy, he's like, if you make me do this, I'm leaving. Like I'm leaving for the day. And I was like, well, we have to do it. Like this is my job. And he was like, fine. And he like ripped off his apron, took off his gloves, he threw them down, and he like made this big scene and walked out the door. And I was like sweating bullets. And then like the foreman guy came over and he was like, don't worry about that. He does that all the time.
Great.
And but it was, I mean, it is complicated, the whole union non-union thing. It's hard to know where the right balance point is, because I think I used to be more, anti-union. Used to think that like unions were kind of had too much power, and like were making things cost more and or things like that. But I think I've come around just because of everything we've seen with globalization and like jobs being shipped to other places, and just this continual, and how that has an effect on communities, especially kind of communities that are not like right around urban centers. So I'm starting to think that like they do have real value in some situations. But did you have any thoughts like based on that experience?
No, I agree with you. I think I grew up in like Utah's a fairly red state, and so I think I also came into that experience with a fairly less of a union bias.
Yeah.
But I've similarly wised up to the fact that there's a role to play for labor to be organized and kind of have labor rights.
Yeah.
And I also felt like we developed a fairly amicable relationship there. Like I joking's aside with the union steward, we got work done, and we were friends, and we talked about our kids. So yeah, it was great.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think finding that balance is really important. As far as I understand, in North Dakota, there was not as good of a final situation. I think another company came and bought the Bobcat company, and as far as I know, a lot of the manufacturing was actually taken out of that area, and I haven't been back there since, but I imagine it's had a really, it's been really challenging for a lot of the people who had worked there for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
So it's tough. But so anyway, so you did the two years at
Right,
GE
2 years
and
at
then
GE.
HBS.
Yep.
What did you think of, like, what was your first reaction of HBS? What were your first, like, 2 weeks like?
Well, so the lawns are incredible. I mean, maybe that's not what we're here to talk about, but like the campus is amazing. My first 2 weeks, I think I felt fairly intimidated, or there's this imposter syndrome. I don't even know what that means, but like there's this concern that you're not going to measure up, right?
Sure.
I didn't think I really merited going to any fancy school, and HBS seemed pretty fancy. At least the lawn looked really fancy. So I think I had to warm up to the idea of that I could contribute something meaningful to the class, and figure out where this fit with my identity and future and all that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was going to say something very similar. I was terrified.
Yeah.
I was, for like, number one, of the academics.
Yeah.
Because, like you, being an engineer, I'm like, oh no, all this finance stuff, it sounds complicated. And then just, like, being around such a, I don't know, accomplished group of people, like, definitely feeling like, I'm not sure I really belong here.
Yeah.
But I was pleasantly surprised in that I thought the quality of the person, like, of the not necessarily like the academic or whatever, but the individual person was pretty high. Like, I worried that it was going to be a lot of people who were, like, super arrogant and whatnot, but I found that to be, super atypical, and I thought most people were outstanding human beings. And so anyway, you're an engineer, you're at HBS, and then you start thinking about the whole, like, internet tech world, right? I mean, like, tell me about, like, how your thinking about your career changed from, like, when you started HBS, like, what your intention was versus, like, how it evolved and where you eventually ended up.
Yeah. So it's worth maybe mentioning. So back when I was doing the mechanical engineer, applying to HBS, I was involved in this startup is not the right word, but this small business that my brother-in-law was starting, making bikes.
Oh.
Yeah, so he used to make, like, electric scooters before they were a thing in San Francisco.
Oh, I think I remember this. Okay,
And he had this idea of making this elongated bike with a bucket on the back for carrying kids and cargo and stuff. But he needed someone to design, to like draw this in CAD and do some other kind of real. He wasn't much of, like, a math engineer, more of a builder, do-it-yourself type. Yeah, so I worked for him for my junior year, and it was basically just the two. I mean, the company was just the two of us. I worked with Chinese engineers to, like, get this design real. And it was crazy to see, like, bikes show up that, like, looked like the thing that we had drawn. It lives on today. You can look. Madsen Cycles is the name of the company.
What's it called?
Madsen. His last name, Madsen.
Okay.
Cycles.
Madsen Cycles. Yeah.
And he's selling, plenty of bikes to cover his kind of costs. And,
that's great.
So that's his full-time gig. And I think that through that, I left that experience being like, no, I don't, like, I can either do normal widget building in a cubicle engineering, or I can do this kind of, like, build your own thing.
Sure.
Back to Capsella days, I wanted to, like, make whatever.
Yeah.
So I think I thought that GE would, like, teach me how to make things. And I think in that time I for whatever reason was drawn to software. The product life cycles of a jet engine are, like, 50 years. So you like design one thing and work on it your whole life if you want.
Right.
Whereas software just seemed a bit more of, again, this kind of iterative, cutting edge, a little faster moving. So I tried to make teach myself how to make mobile apps. That was cool then.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of my thing going into HBS, was like, I'm going to I'll be an internet entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'll like use this 2 years to incubate something. It's kind of the plan.
Yeah.
I didn't get very far. Like I made, there was a business plan contest. I won a few $1,000s, maybe 5 or 10, for an idea, which I had a prototype. So that was super exciting.
What was that idea again?
This was digitizing, creating like a digital experience alongside the phone call, mostly for call centers.
Oh.
So I call a call center with basically a computer, like a smartphone's a computer. The call center reps add a computer.
Yeah. And
yet everything we do is verbal. Like if they want me to authenticate, I do it verbally. I state my birth date and who I am.
Yeah.
Like credit card information happens verbally. I feel like there should be some kind of data connection, and I should just pass this via my screen. So I had a little prototype on Android phones that if I call a certain number, instead of seeing the call screen, I could intercept the screen and put my own screen up and put anything on it. And that was enough to get me a few $1,000 and me hooked on like the idea that I could build something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it didn't. I mean, just to wrap that idea, it didn't work on iPhone and it didn't work on CDMA. So like, it didn't work on like 3/4 of the market. So I shelved that idea at the time.
And so, but you were hunting for startups. We actually almost worked on a startup together. Do you remember this?
So we talked. I don't remember what it was actually.
Kind of a prototypical strategy for HBS students, they always tell you, is go across the river, go meet some MIT engineers.
Yeah, I hung out over there.
And go find, great technology, and they're looking for, great business person. And so I think you were hanging out there and you were like, hey, Joe, because we were both looking at startups or starting our own thing. You say, hey, Joe, come with me. And we went, and I think it was like 2 PhDs that were working on some way to convert sound to energy.
100% remember this. Yes.
And we were trying to understand their technology and figure out like business applications for
That's right. We were going to put like these panels on freeways.
Yeah.
And we're like, it'll reduce sound and create a little bit of energy. We'll have to look those guys up.
Yeah. I don't think that went past the first meeting, but that was fun. I almost forgot about that. Okay, and so then, and what did you do in between the 2 years again?
So I went to Amazon.
Right.
So I was a PM on AWS Spot instances, EC2, Elastic Compute Cloud. So their emerging cloud offering, which would define what I would do for like the next 5 years in some respects. And these things all kind of played into each other. Like I think the only reason I got the Amazon job is because I pitched them on this idea. Like they were like, so what, anything interesting you've done? I was like, well, I have this app that half works. I keep parlaying these like half successful projects into other potentially larger half successful things.
There you go.
Yeah.
And so that means when we graduated, you basically had a similar role at Google, right? Could you talk about that?
So after one of the people I worked with at Amazon for the summer disappeared one day, and then I discovered they reappeared on LinkedIn at Google. And we had connections from business school to Google, so I was like, hey, this looks like Google's going to start growing this public cloud business. Maybe it will rival Amazon's. Plus, everyone wants to work at Google, right? And I was kind of brainwashed into the thinking that Google was the place to be, and it largely played out. It's wonderful. But so I applied through a friend and found a role on the cloud team at business school. Yeah.
Cool. And so some of us know about the cloud and what it is, but like maybe just tell people a little bit about cloud services and what that means, maybe for people who are less technical, and then also like what were you doing there?
Yeah. So, in fact, whenever I tell people I work on cloud, they're like, "Oh, kind of like Dropbox." Like that's like, yeah. I guess you put your files in the cloud. Fair enough. But similar to the idea of Dropbox is the idea that when people make websites, they generally write the code for the website on their local laptop, and then they ship that code over to a known server, like one in their basement or at their office, or and you know, if you've seen the movie Social Network, Mark Zuckerberg, you know, runs into the dorm room one day and he's like, I need 5 more Apache something something servers. You know, this is what people had to do when they made websites. They had to like get hardware in their dorm room, and so Amazon slowly released services that basically made it so you didn't always have to get a server first. So at first it was just, I think it was S3, and then later EC2. But the idea that you could hit a button on your laptop and they would make a virtual server for you. You have no idea where it is, but you have your computer would connect to it just like it connected to one in your dorm room, and so you could start pushing your website onto that virtual server,
right,
wherever it was.
Right, and because it was centralized, they were able to drop the cost considerably, and that had a big effect on entrepreneurship in general because it lowered the bar for getting started.
Yeah, totally. The cost came down, but I think as much as anything, it was the instantaneous and the flexibility that like you can get the resources you need in a moment as opposed to like in 3 weeks.
Yeah. And then you were there for how long? And then help us understand that experience, and then how you transitioned to here.
Yeah, I was there for I think more than 4 years, and cloud was a kind of dynamic, like that org within Google was kind of undefined, new. I actually ended up, the way the hiring process worked, on the sales team initially, which I had come from a product management role at Google, and I kind of thought that's what I wanted, at Amazon, and I thought that's what I wanted to do at Google, and I had never done sales. So I was like, the kind of entrepreneur, like the wannabe entrepreneur in me was like, oh, this is great. Like I needed to learn sales. And that I quickly transitioned into kind of doing, no one was doing growth metrics. We had no visibility on our customer. So I kind of dived into this technical project to build like a data warehouse for us internally to like capture all these metrics. Maybe the side note between both the AWS decision, I had other choices at Amazon to do and here. I think I felt like I wanted to prove, I was coming into Silicon Valley and the tech scene as an MBA, and I felt like I had to prove to people I was an engineer. Like I would meet the engineers and they would kind of dismiss me. I was like, no, I'm one of you. And so I was trying to always take on these, like when I went to Amazon, I was like, give me the technical project. And so I ended up on EC2, and then coming to Google, I was like, I'll do the data warehouse thing. And it played out well, I think, for my career, but I think it was mostly I had this chip on my shoulder.
Yeah.
We were building this data warehouse on an internal product and I worked with that product team a lot, and they eventually pulled me into their product team as a product manager on data processing tools because of our experience through that project. And I spent the next 2.5 years doing this, managing this product we called Google Cloud Dataflow. Dataflow was Google kind of pioneered this approach to computing that we talk a lot about, but distributed computing. Now we talk a lot about decentralized computing, but then the idea that just you could run kind of a single process across multiple computers was new, increasingly important, and like complex. And so the team that kind of pioneered distributed computing had been working together to improve those systems for like 8 years before I joined. So it was kind of a strange situation to be kind of a wannabe software engineer leading product for like what is arguably the most technical team at Google, like the MapReduce team as they call themselves. Mostly like PhDs. Most of them have been widely published as like, breakthrough software engineering ideas. So that was kind of an interesting situation.
Was it like a fake it till you make it type of mindset you had?
Yeah, I mean, I think yes. That fake it to make it maybe brings with the connotation that like maybe people get annoyed by you because you have no, you're like, kind of just pretending.
Right.
I had to be deliberately kind of humble and
Yeah.
But certainly it was like learn quickly. I mean,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah. I find it interesting because in general, I think people see look at other people and they see their titles or they see their accomplishments and they're like, whoa, they just got it all together. But more often than not, if you look just like one level deeper at like that person's actual lived experience, it's, man, I was terrified, or
Yeah.
I wasn't, I didn't deserve to get this role, but I somehow got it because of this person or this crazy situation. So I always think that's important to point out, to kind of lower the bar, I think, for people in how they're thinking about, their success or whatever they're aiming towards. And so you're having a great time. Google is an amazing place to work.
Amazing.
And how and it sounds like you were completing a lot of your objectives or succeeding at your goals. So what inspired a change?
Well, I was supposed to be an entrepreneur, and if you look at my resume, I've been at GE, maybe if you count Amazon, and now Google, like the 3 largest companies in the world, kind of doing line management. I felt a little bit like I was, betraying some part of myself.
Sure.
Or like not being honest with myself. I should just own up to the fact of what I really am. So I felt like maybe that was time. At the point I was, at 4 years within Google, we had shipped Data Flow. I had taken on a new product called Data Prep. We shipped Data Prep. I was feeling like maybe it was time for a new challenge, new thing, and I had to come to terms with the fact that, like, if you're going to do a startup, maybe this is about the time to do it. So I spent a lot of time with kind of moonlighting with various infrastructure startups. I'd spent 5 years in cloud infrastructure, kind of knew the space, knew some interesting teams, and so I was there was a team that was incubated at the Greylock office, and I spent a lot of time there with them. A few other startups. I went through like an interview process with kind of more mature startups. People I worked with at Google were leaving. I was talking about working something with them, and through all of this, I kept running into more VCs who, like, they were leading me to companies, or kind of I was hanging out in their offices, and the conversation started to emerge like, well, why don't you consider VC? That that was like the thing to do coming out of business school, but I always felt like, no, I want to build something. I want to start this company, and so it was always something I could do later. And so suddenly I was having to reconcile that decision as well. Like, maybe this is an opportune time to do VC.
Yeah, and that's right around where we connected in San Francisco.
All the cool people like Joe Blair did VC. Anybody who could muster it got a great VC job, and it was only those of us who couldn't that were considering this much later in our careers.
Well, I will take the compliment. So tell us about Scale. Tell us about Scale. Tell us about your role here, what you do.
Yeah. I actually don't know that I heard of Scale. Not that I paid much attention to the various firms available, but I was super impressed with them when I met them. I guess a couple things stood out. One, they actually have they seem very thoughtful about how they do their work. They have kind of a methodology where, and I'm sure most firms do, but it just seemed to really stand out at Scale, where I think a lot of, I worried that venture was, a lot of networking or fluff, really. But and it seemed to pan out, and they had done some great deals. Like they seem to, as an investor, you want to find buy low, sell high. You want to like find undervalued opportunities. And Scale seemed like these people know what they're doing. They're closing good deals, and I have never heard of them. But I was impressed by not only like Box, DocuSign, great SaaS companies, but also I was planning to work more on the infrastructure, developer tooling side. JFrog, CircleCI, these were data stacks companies I had been working with at Google that I thought were top notch. So that was exciting. And then the people were great. There was a bunch. It was all Joe Blairs basically, a bunch of down to earth. No, kind of low profile, easy to get along with people. And I think I was wisening up to the fact that a venture firm is a fairly intimate career experience. At Google, you can just kind of float around, join new teams, very loosey-goosey. But venture firms are fairly wed to each other.
Yeah, it's like a family.
Yeah.
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 You're in it, yeah, for the long haul. It's not like you just, okay, I'll transition to my next project and I'll get a new boss or whoever. You really have to get along with your team, your core team. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've kind of explained Scale, but we do mostly Series A, B, some C, investments in traditionally enterprise SaaS and this kind of security and infrastructure developer tooling. I mean, we've broadened that some. I think we're as we should. We're kind of always looking at what's the next horizon for opportunity. So lately, it's been some what some people might call frontier tech. A lot of some robotics. I think 3 or 4 robotics companies, and more into. We dabbled in consumer and some vertical specific solutions, which we didn't do prior.
Gotcha. And what is your specific either focus area or kind of some of the areas you're hunting in right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the two I've done the most since being here have been. I came from a data infrastructure, data engineering land. I still think there's a ton of opportunity. People aren't satisfied with the solutions. Data's only the data problem's only getting kind of worse and more important. And there's a history of great exits. Like there's a willingness to pay here, and it doesn't seem like the cloud providers are making a huge dent there as they have like in app development, for example. So still interested there. I came expecting to do a lot of work around Kubernetes ecosystem. With the kind of app development ecosystem, which has gone through a big transformation of late around an open source project called Kubernetes, and which is maybe just the latest in the transformations around containers. So I think most people know that Amazon kind of pioneered this move to public cloud for software engineers, and then Docker kind of moved us towards containers, which ran in the public cloud, and then Google lately has kind of the latest iteration in this progress is introduced a project called Kubernetes that orchestrates containers, generally run public cloud, and it has the whole industry. And basically all enterprises, I think, are now considering replatforming stuff that they haven't touched for a long time, to kind of modernizing it. Like if I'm going to bring it to the cloud, I might as well bring it on into containers and run it on Kubernetes. So I think there's a big opportunity for startups to create a lot of value in this transition for enterprises. That's kind of, I think, where I planned on spending my time and where I spent maybe half of it. I've also spent a lot of time in security. I don't think I realized the urgency around privacy, GDPR, and just cybersecurity there is. And then I think my interest and background led me to keep an eye on the latest kind of open source and developer activity around decentralized web, cryptocurrency. It's both interesting, and it seems like there's something there we're keeping an eye on.
And you talked about Scale being, having a methodology, or something that impressed you in that respect. Can you just talk a little bit more about like some of the so like just
Yeah.
more on that topic, like
Yeah.
like how are they different in terms of their methodology or their product? Is it around like having certain metrics that they want to see and being very structured in that way, or is it more about having processes or something in the back end?
Yeah, so on a simple sense, we fairly constrain the problem that we're just going to wait until companies have validated product market fit as evidenced by customer references, which is a very like once you declare that, then you've like constrained the world of startups to like, and I think that helps in the boil of the ocean problem. There's just so much activity that constraining the problem lets you focus on and kind of be better at a certain motion. So we look for people who are going to be immediately growing in the next 2 quarters because they've shown that customers want this product and they have a way to deliver it to them. So that's one thing that's interesting. I think as kind of a technologist to some degree, it means I don't get to invest in the earliest of ideas. But I've kind of accepted the fact that that's good for now. Like there's a lot out there, and I like the space I can work in. And then maybe the broader methodology around we try and be independent thinkers and trend focused. I think VCs say that, and I imagine that they do it. But I appreciated the way they did that here. I think in my early interviewing and interactions with the team, they were very thoughtful about what's going to happen with containers and serverless trends I was keeping an eye on. And since joining the team, it's been it's easy, I guess, to just be reactive to to all the excitement in the market. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And I think there's a mentality here that like we should separate ourselves from that enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And think carefully about long term where things headed, and place patient bets. That seems a bit vague, but
yeah. No, a couple things are resonating. I mean, we and I like to be pretty thesis driven in our investing as well, and the thing that you said that resonates is the customer references, because every pitch has the entrepreneur saying, well, our customers love us and they want to do more and whatnot, and it's really hard to gauge like when that's true. But once you get on the phone with the customer, you really get a sense, because I feel like there's like the 0 to 8 level of enthusiasm, which kind of like all blends together. It's like, we're using it. It's like so far so good, whatnot. And then every once in a while you hit on like a 9 or a 10 where people are like, I love this thing.
Yeah.
Or I had one customer reference on a company we invested in recently, where the customer said it was a big company, and they said if this team can do what they've already shown they can do on a small scale, if they can do it at a slightly larger scale, we'll give them so much work they won't be able to handle it. Yeah, and right away I was like, okay, great, I gotta go. we gotta close this deal, which we did. But I think that says volumes, right? And you can get a sense from the call, like in the person's voice, in something that you can't write down, you can't quantify necessarily, but when you hear it, it really speaks volumes.
Totally. And I think it's good to remind yourself as an investor that you're not the arbiter of truth. Your opinion isn't the investing opinion. I think it's easy to like hear a pitch and be like, oh, I think I would like that, or that's a good idea, that's not a good idea. And by always delaying final judgment to the customer references in some sense, I keep myself in like almost like the product manager's point of view, where I'm like, let's let the market decide, and I need to go to the market and hear their reactions. And I think having my skill set be to understand a customer's reference of a product and assess that reference, being rather than my skill set being like I know what good ideas look like. I think is a more compelling belief. I think that's a skill I can hone, versus just being like the all-wise arbiter of what's interesting.
Yeah, just being able to see the future.
Yeah,
that's harder to do.
Yeah, I'm going to try and see the future, and I'll lean on the market to kind of inform that as much as I can.
Makes a lot of sense. And so tell me about, as a VC, as a career choice, given the other things you've done, what do you like about it and what's hard about it?
So the immediate thing I loved was the intellectual freedom, going back to my school days where it was like I had a hard time doing homework, but I could spend all night on a project that I thought was interesting. I'm just intrinsically motivated to work every day. Like I wake up and this is what I want to do, and this is how I want to spend all my cycles. And it's easy to just pour the time I've allotted to work into this because I think it's interesting, and that's kind of how I'm wired. So that's been super awesome. There's no more like, so-and-so manager needs an email once a week because she decided that was important. I don't think it's important, but I have to do it. Mm-hmm. No, I feel, scale and I think are aligned. We just want great deals, and whatever it takes to find great deals is how I'm going to spend my time. That's awesome. Probably the best part of the job. You wanted some downside on the job.
Yeah, something that's hard about it, or
yeah, I think what's hard.
Different.
So certainly there's this lone wolf aspect where it can feel a little isolating. I do find moments where I'm back on the back porch, looking at my telescope, in VC land, where I'm like, I think this is interesting, but no one else is here to appreciate this with me, and I'm often trounced around San Francisco on my own. Mm-hmm. I think I handle that better than some, I imagine, but there, it's that's one aspect. I think another is just the inherent luck, and kind of there's always this risk that like you'll make a wise decision that won't pan out, and it will define your career. There's this great upside that the reverse is just as likely to happen, but
right.
but the downside is a little kind of eats at you.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I think for me the hardest part is just the infinite amount of things that could be done.
Yeah. And
just I feel like I could have 48 hours in my day and I would still never get to the end of my to-do list. But I definitely, and the lone wolf thing I don't think bothers me as much, but your second point I think I definitely resonate with.
I'll also just add I hate turning down founders.
Yeah.
I mean I'm getting better at it, and I'm learning to make it not personal and realize that this is part of the game. It's not a big deal, but
right.
But I think early on at least I felt like I identified with some founders, and I felt like I was breaking their hearts and breaking mine.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Cool. And you're also working on an app.
Yeah. So I'm always working on something.
You always got something in your back pocket.
No, I think it's important to. Maybe this is probably just me justifying things, but I think it's important to kind of keep my skills relevant, and there's always new things I'm hearing about that I want to try in terms of tooling. But again, that's probably just justification because I think it'd be fun to. There's always new things that want to be built. So one of the recent projects was this thing. It's actually there's a live site. You can go to docpro.app.
Docpro.app?
Yeah, that may have not been the best URL. I don't know. No one uses .app, but .pro.com was taken. Okay. So docpro.app. The idea is basically, on the page I called it an Uber for office work, mm-hmm. But I think the origin, it came out of my brother was really into this 4-Hour Workweek book.
Tim Ferriss.
Tim
book.
Ferriss. Yeah, Tim,
right.
And Tim says you should outsource things that you can outsource. Mm-hmm. Outsource all the kind of mundane parts of your work. And my brother was really into this, so he got an assistant, a virtual assistant. He told me to get one.
Usually from India or some.
Yeah, it's
like
outsourced
that.
into kind of a for relative to U.S. low wage knowledge worker.
Yeah.
But the process of finding a virtual assistant isn't super easy. It's almost like hiring someone.
Right.
And then you're hiring them for what for me was like, I don't know, an hour or two a week. And so it's unclear how they kept busy. Anyway, I was like, I really just want to write up a document that summarizes what I want done, share it with this virtual worker, and then have us both like collaborate with somebody. Like, as if it was a coworker, like pull them over my desk, like I want this done and then this done, and then as they do a little bit, like actually a little more of this and not that. And Google Docs does this kind of out of the box for you.
Right.
So Doc Pro is basically you share your. It's not even a document you're working on, but like you describe a project in a document, share that with Doc Pro. We have somebody jump in and do that work for you, and you can kind of comment in real time and collaborate with them on how you want it done. And then as soon as you're done with the collaboration, you can kick them out of the document, and we bill you by the minute. That's it.
I think that's great because I also read that book, and for a short time I was like looking into it because I'm like, hey, this sounds like a good idea. And basically the idea is to be able to spend more time on the things that are more important, or and spend less time on the things that are urgent but like less important, or could be if you can outsource it, you should. That's the principle. But I remember like reading that book, I'm like, okay, give me the website. Like what is the service I should use? And I think the problem that like folks like Tim Ferriss have is if they say the name of a service, then everyone starts using it, and either they get overwhelmed, or they grow and the quality goes down.
Yeah.
So I remember hearing him say like he has a policy. He doesn't say any specific firms anymore. He's like, just go find one.
Yeah, I need Tim to endorse Doc Pro.
There you go.
I'm just kidding.
That's what you need, or maybe not. But anyway, so I remember having that conundrum. I'm like, I'm interested in this, but like I don't have like an hour to, or many hours to like start interviewing people and whatnot. So to have like a pre-vetted group of people that are reliable, I think could be really valuable. But this is having the Epic Human podcast promote this is even better than Tim Ferriss.
That's right.
In some ways,
who needs Tim?
Because
we've got Joe.
You won't be overwhelmed with business, but you'll probably get some. So why don't we move to the quickfire round? That's cool with you.
Sure.
Okay. So
it's like a game show.
Inquiring minds want to know, what do you do for fun besides build this app and all the fun you have at work?
So I have this baked-in fun machine at home. There's 4 of them. So I have 4 kids, believe it or not, and I feel like I have to explain myself every time I say that. But no, my wife and I, we got married young. We started having kids young, and then we kept having kids. I guess that's the only way you get to having 4. So maybe it doesn't need explanation. But so yeah, they provide a lot of fun. They're the best. We like to go to the beach, but more personal stuff. So I play basketball once a week, which is like a surprisingly important part of my life. Like it feels great. Good group of guys. I occasionally do a little, road biking, just because that's the thing to do around here. It seems, trying to fit in. No. What else? Yeah, I'll ski in the winters. I've always skied most of my life growing up in Utah. I like to give the locals a hard time. I leave my gear in Utah. I went skiing once in California and it rained, so I just
I see.
I only ski on good snow.
Well, you don't know what bad snow is like until you've skied in the
Right.
Northeast.
Yeah, that's right.
We call it ice skating up there.
Certainly Tahoe's not the worst.
Yeah. Cool. And yeah, 4 kids. How do you do it? And how do you do it and then also have like other things like basketball, app, work development, ski? Like how do you have all of this?
Well, so you just play basketball once a week. So that's a start. But my wife and I are we've been fairly committed to family all along. At some point we decided one of us would stay home, which makes it all possible, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure there's you can do it with both working people do, but that's the way we've made it work. And what? Yeah. Right. I think so. The app development just doesn't happen as much as I'd like. That's the thing that gives.
Mm-hmm.
And it happens in fits and spurts where I get excited about something and I'll work 4 hours on a Saturday and then it sits for 2 weeks. Yeah.
Awesome. Just make it work, right? Like
so I cut out sport, like I don't watch. And this isn't intentional. It just kind of that was the thing that fell off the wagon. But I used to watch college football was like what I did on Saturdays.
Yeah.
We don't even subscribe to anything that could show us TV. We don't have a TV in the house.
Right.
So yeah, a bunch of stuff fell off the plate, I guess.
Totally. Totally. No, I mean we're the same way. We don't have TV or cable. But yeah, I there are a lot of things I don't do that I used to do. Like we talked about movies,
right?
Like even Netflix. Like I watch more like short shows because I normally have like
right.
not enough time for a whole movie. I'm like I don't want to invest that amount of time.
Right.
So yeah, life just adapts and it kind of changes and you're able to fill the holes where you can.
And I think a lot of this may be getting more into what we don't want to, but like,
it's okay. We can
I
go
kind of
anywhere.
have theory. I know there's, I feel there's a pervasive theory among my peers that you kind of have to invest in your career early on, and then once that stabilizes, there's time for family. And I agree with the fact that like you can't have it all really. And so there's going to be a time in my life where I can enjoy some of those things again, once things slow down at home. But right now it's family and work and yeah.
So but that theory you're saying is that theory you're saying is pervasive, but it's not what you believe.
Yeah, I
right?
mean it's certain. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Because I agree with you. I think that is a common thing.
Maybe the broader theory is that there's this money. There's a time value to money that's well understood. Like if you have $100 now, it's worth more than $100 later because it can accrue. And I think the same is true with careers. That like if you invest an hour of time earlier in your career, it may be better than investing it later in your career, because you'll advance your career faster early, which will pay dividends kind of over the course of your career. So I think a lot of people are like, I gotta burn the candle by both ends early in my career so I can advance it as quickly as possible, and then kind of enjoy the kind of proceeds of that early investment. But I think it's also basically true of everything, including family. Like I think there's a time value of family. Like I think in time that I invest in my kids now will pay dividends later in life, and so I think there's a cost to, maybe, I don't know if cost is the right word, but rather than looking at the negative side, there's a cost of delaying it. I think there's some benefit to investing that equally alongside my career earlier in my life. That's the bet I'm making, at least.
No, man, I totally agree. It's the way I describe it is there's no good time to have kids.
Yeah,
right?
That's the right way to put it.
It's like you can try to hack it and create this perfect scenario, but I've never really seen it work perfectly.
Yeah.
Like there are costs and benefits to both sides. I mean, if you wait longer, sure, maybe you have a little bit more cash or maybe a little bit more developed of a career, but of course, biologically, it's harder for women to get pregnant later and whatnot. And so then there's IVF and fertility treatments and whatnot. So, there is that balance. And I also believe, like, as a parent, like the one benefit of being a parent is I am the most efficient I've ever been in my life.
Yeah.
Because if I have, a certain number of hours at work, you better believe I am busting my buns that entire time.
Yeah.
Like I don't stop to watch a YouTube video or chit
Read
chat
news.
or whatever. Yeah, read the news. Yeah,
Yeah.
Goodness. I am just like 100% dedicated to that. And then when I go home, I'm 100% dedicated to being at home. But I might get as much done as I would have if I'd been at work, an extra 50% that day. And then, of course, again, I'm not watching like 2 hours of TV or movies like I used to when I get home. So I feel like there's a kind of hidden benefit of not having as much time.
Yeah. And I think there may be a societal concern with the kind of theory I presented before, taken to the extreme, where I think some people feel like the bulk of their career should happen before family, and they almost kind of go into like really successful people. I think kind of go into like semi-retirement, almost like I'm gonna wind down my boardships and maybe kind of step away from the company a little bit because I'm gonna go have family or kids, and I think that makes it hard for a world where we want to be more inclusive of those, if I think if you like what am I trying to say? Like particularly if we want to get women to have a more active role in the workplace, I think having a family may be more disruptive to careers, and I think if the sentiment is you kind of have to delay family in order to have a career, I think that's problematic for broader gender diversity in the workplace.
Right.
Where I think if we kind of embrace the idea that there's value in investing in family earlier and you can have careers alongside family, I think that makes it easier, at least, to have a more diverse workplace.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. That makes a lot of sense. Cool. Well, I mean, the next question I was going to ask you, which I prepared you for, was what do you believe that some people don't? You may have just answered it.
Maybe.
But if you want to take another stab at it, you can. Otherwise, we could just go to the next one.
Well, this is. I'll take a stab, and I don't know if this is all that profound. Maybe everyone believes it, but I think we can learn things faster than we think we can. There's this law of diminishing returns, I guess it's called, right? So if you if you mow the lawn, you take one pass at mowing the lawn, it looks a lot better than it did before. If you take a second pass at mowing the lawn, it looks a little bit better. But the third pass, you're kind of wasting your time. The lawn looks really good at this point.
Okay.
Fourth and fifth pass don't really help. And I think learning kind of follows a similar curve where if you spend a good 4 hours learning economics, you can learn all the key terms. You can understand some major ideas. A solid YouTube video will get you pretty far. The next 4 hours are going to be less efficient in terms of steps, big steps forward, and the next 4 hours less efficient, such that I think we often think that experts are so good we'll never catch them. But the truth is that you can learn faster, you can advance along their trajectory faster than they can because you're further behind.
Oh, interesting.
Your next 4 hours of research are going to be more productive than their 4 hours, such that I kind of have this theory that I can get spun up on something fairly meaningfully well in a relatively short amount of time. Anyway, whereas I think I face this a lot in my work where I run into people I don't really know that subject.
Not my thing.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't really understand machine learning. Whatever.
Right.
Insert thing here.
Right.
Politics. I don't know.
Blockchain.
Yeah, blockchain. Yeah, and part of me is well, that you could though. You realize that. In fact, you would be the most efficient because you're so you think you're so far away that you're your 3 hours are going to be super productive.
Yeah. That's interesting. I imagine that mindset is pretty handy in venture and what you're doing.
Yeah, I may have just convinced myself of it to motivate myself.
That's self-fulfilling prophecy.
Maybe
that's good.
That's a
good thing.
Yeah.
But do you also use it in your personal life, or if you're just interested in something, or have you?
Yeah, I mean, this is like, like one of the apps I wanted to build. I like. This is a bad example, probably, but yeah, I think there's certainly other topics I find interesting. I was about to talk about nutrition, but I don't really think I've learned all what's a good. Like philosophy has always kind of been something interesting to me, but I've never studied, and I always felt like I couldn't really comment on it without knowing like how people talk about it. like it seems silly to like kind of pontificate on matters that I've spent no time. So yeah, I watched a course online. Or rather listened to it on my commute lately, and then I checked out a couple books, and now I feel like I don't know, in a place where I can make a contribution to a discussion, to a line of thinking.
That's interesting. That the thing that comes to mind for me is history. Like I've always struggled with history, or like not found it interesting, just because I think the way it's taught in school, it's like, okay, memorize these dates.
Right.
Who is this person? Whatnot. Whereas, have you heard of the podcast called Hardcore History with Dan Carlin?
I've heard of it. I haven't listened to it.
It is an incredible podcast, and he has like 7-part series on ancient Rome.
Okay.
Or like a 6-part series on Genghis Khan.
Okay.
And I listen to that because it's entertaining.
Right.
But then I come away and I'm like, I know about that.
Yeah. I finally know when the Assyrian revolution was, or whatever.
Yeah, and I'm still not great about memorizing dates, but
right.
I can memorize like images or like interesting stories and things like that. That I find that's a handy way of consuming information kind of on the go.
Right.
But no, that's an interesting theory. And so, what advice? This is a new question.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to a young person, let's say they're in college or pre-college or not in college, or they're just like in their early part of their career? What advice generalized type of advice would you give them on kind of building a career, forging their way?
Well, so here's one piece of advice. May not be the best, but we'll start here. I'm fairly disappointed with, again, there's this pervasive idea in workplaces that you should become well-rounded. Like you'll go to like a performance review is kind of seemingly structured around this idea that like, let's talk about what you're good at. Like these are the things you excelled. Here's where you didn't excel. In order for you to like advance or get to the next level, you need to like kind of warm up these. Like they never say like, forget about the fact that you don't return emails. Let's talk about like how you are an awesome public speaker. Let's just double down on that.
Yeah.
Like that just doesn't happen in those meetings. But I think it should, basically. Like that's my like I would we don't talk about Steve Jobs like ability to manipulate numbers. Like that's just not something that you hear people talk about.
Right.
But he could have decided when he was 24, like, my finance is not great. I'm going to spend some time with the finance department, which would like do really well on a performance review. Like, look, I spent the last 6 months with finance. I like understand the way they're thinking. I deserve this promotion. But no, like I think what the world wants is expertise. Well, not the world, like the market. Like what the market will reward you for is like an unusual amount, an unusual capacity. Mm-hmm. In some regard, and you need a certain baseline in other places to function and to not like drop the balls and so I think you want to be well-rounded in your ability to function with other people, but then you just want to like hammer home this like one thing in some like that if you want to maximize your kind of ability to impact a market or personal return. I would think to find your niche and exploit it is one way of approaching a career.
Yeah. That's interesting too, because you're kind of describing it like functionally.
Yeah.
Which I agree with. But I would say it's also like industry knowledge.
Yeah, sure.
Like, and I find I see this sometimes as a VC, as like someone comes and pick a random industry and you've got this person where she or he has spent their entire career in it and knows it backwards and forwards, and I know next to nothing about that industry. And someone who is maybe giving them bad advice could have said, hey, this is kind of a small industry, you're going to get pigeonholed or whatnot. But then when they turn around and want to start a company to change that industry, like there's no one better qualified than that person. So that's a good one. So slight modification on the question.
Yeah.
Slight modification, or maybe you have something to say on that.
No, that's it.
Slight modification on that question. If you could go back and give your 23-year-old self some advice, what would it be?
Some variation of maybe two things, like a bit of trust your gut and take more risks. I think if it hasn't become apparent, I at least fancy myself as like an idea person. I get excited about ideas. Maybe they're not good ideas, but I get excited. It's nonetheless a source of motivation for me. And I've been in a situation where like X should happen, like someone should do X, and or I could do X, and I think I would kind of sit on that idea for a while, and I'd be busy with the homework or whatever responsibilities I have in life. I have a real disdain for homework, and apparently.
Have I mentioned?
Yeah, I mentioned. But I think I should have taken a couple more of those risks early on, and or at least followed my gut. At least we're all impressed by people who kind of take the reins and make something happen, even if it doesn't really like go anywhere or doesn't amount to much. But that, I think we all have a sense for what needs to be good. So that's in the grand scale, like go do something. But even like in a meeting, like so often I've been in meetings where I'm like, this idea doesn't seem like a great idea, maybe for this reason, and I think it's my own thoughts. And then like 2 minutes later, someone's like, hey, why are we doing that? And I'll be like, yeah, that's what I was thinking. But I feel like it's not about who gets credit so much, but there are meetings where no one says anything, and I think my unwillingness to kind of trust my gut, take a risk, throw my idea out there, I limited the contributions I made, the like amount of trust that people have in me, and like my personal satisfaction. I think being fearful but secretly right is not as fun or as maybe as interesting as being kind of like a little bit wrong, but having done it or something maybe.
And surprisingly, sometimes failure isn't as painful as you think it's going to be.
Yeah,
like the fear of it is worse than the actual experience. That was my experience when I started that company in business school, and my worst nightmare was it failing, and then when I shut it down, it was like silence, like nothing happened. Like I'm like, wait, where's the group of people that's going to come in and beat me up? Oh yeah, that doesn't happen. And to the contrary, people, like you said, people are impressed when you try something, even if you fail. And I
think it engenders trust in somebody. Like they can be a leader if they noticed this same thing as I did, and they spoke up about it sooner and they advanced it quicker. It's like, that's someone I want to follow, I think.
Yeah, that's good advice. How can people follow you? How can people, if people like you as much as I do, how can they follow you, whether online or how can they follow Scale?
Yeah.
How can people be?
My commute is no, sorry, that was a bad joke. Just tail me home.
Give your license plate number.
That's right. I'm on Twitter occasionally at Eric Anderson is a hard name in this kind of global digital world. No, like there's a million of us.
Because there's too many.
Yeah. Anyway, so you can find me at Eric M. Anders. Eric Manders, I think it is. Yeah. Anyway, I'm on Twitter a bit. I'm trying to blog more. See if that happens.
What's your blog? How do I get to your blog?
It's on Medium, and then with Scale.
Okay, cool.
And I like meeting people. I'd probably be open to talking to people.
Cool.
And so, yeah, I guess hit me up on Twitter.
All right. Well, that's I'm sure people will. Well, Eric, just want to thank you for your time and for sharing your thoughts and ideas and neat contrarian opinions on things. And it's fun to get to know you a little bit better. I've known you for a long time, but it's always fun to go like one level deeper. So thanks for being on the podcast.
Oh, thank you, Joe. This has been therapeutic, if nothing else.
Well, I enjoyed it. I'm sure other people did as well. So thanks again. And thanks everybody for listening. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Epic Human Podcast. Please remember to like and subscribe to this podcast on whatever app you happen to be using. And if you want to keep up to date on the latest Epic Human Podcasts, please follow us on Twitter or Facebook at Epic Human Pod. And if you have any ideas for guests or feedback on the show, please reach out. I would love to hear from you. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.